The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, in the northern part of California, what I consider to be tied for the greatest state in the country. How about that? I'm from New York originally, and I know I'm going to get some flack over that from my guest, one of the most interesting people in the world. That's what I do. I interview interesting people, so it covers up the fact that I'm a dullard myself. But my guest is from Florida, Joe Castle. How are you? Returning to the airwaves. I'm honored.
Ralph, good to be with you.
Good. Last time we spoke, if I'm not mistaken, you joined me on Peter Golenbach's podcast that I produce.
That's right. That's correct.
You were just charming, as they say. So I'm thrilled to have you back, especially on this day when we have the start of something new in this country. We have hope again. That's the way I see it. Do you respond in the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've come through a very dark chapter, and now we're turning the corner. I mean, we still have some rough days ahead, dealing with a pandemic and trying to figure out who and what were involved in the Capitol terrorist attack. But certainly we're trending in the right direction now, and we're in a better place than we were 24 hours ago.
Is there anything you're surprised by the way Trump left office?
No. I mean, that's kind of what you would predict. I mean, there was no, he never respected the office. So if people were looking for some kind of ceremonial departure, that was never going to happen. He never respected the office. And so he left the way you would expect him to leave. He left really as the biggest loser in the country. And now as private citizen Trump, he's going to have to do something he's not had to do for his entire life, and that's face the ramifications of his actions. And there isn't presidential immunity. If you looked at his departure, all of his so-called allies didn't even bother showing up. Mike Pence's final photographs, none of which were pictured with the president. So, I mean, he's a man on an island. And, and worse for him, he's yesterday's news, because all of us now have to move forward because we've got a lot of serious things that we've got to tend to coming up, namely the pandemic. I mean, we've got to get our lives back to normal. We've got to get vaccinations out. We've got to, start getting our country back to where it was prior to the pandemic hitting.
Are you one of those who feel that his upcoming trial in the Senate for impeachment will be a detriment to our moving on, or will it be welcome, and can Biden serve both masters in these first few weeks?
Well, I think it's necessary that they serve both masters. I mean, the worst thing that can happen to the country after these 4 years, if we just say, oh, it's just too uncomfortable, we have to move on, because then the next authoritarian that comes along who is smarter than Donald Trump is going to see that he can get away with it all. And so really, it's kind of like Joe Biden, I think, prior to the Capitol terrorist attack, probably was in a mindset of it's best we move on, but now he can't. And I think with his appointment of Merrick Garland as Attorney General, he's sending a signal that he's not, because if you look at Merrick Garland's background, most people know him as the person that Mitch McConnell refused to give an audience to as Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee. But Merrick Garland cut his teeth prosecuting domestic terrorists. So, just because Joe Biden didn't tweet it, it's pretty clear what Merrick Garland's mission in the Department of Justice is going to be as Attorney General, and they have said themselves that domestic terrorism is high in their priority list. So, this is going to be something where we are going to be on a two-track kind of thing. We're going to have to deal with the pandemic. We're going to have to deal with a domestic terrorist attack, and incorporated into that is going to be this impeachment trial. But it's not like the trial is going to last long. And the only people who are really complaining about it are the people who have something to hide. Everyone else understands that it's necessary to go forward because, as he did with Ukraine, he clearly committed impeachable offenses. The difference this time is members of Congress had their lives.
This was thrown over the government. This was totally different. And it's so clear on the video where he's getting people to go march with me, we'll take back the country, that sort of thing. I only wish that we could go back in a time machine with these thoughts to talk to Gerald Ford in 1975 or 76, whatever it was. But what he did by refusing by pardoning Nixon was his idea was the country has to heal, this, that, and the other thing. He set the tone for what presidents could get away with later on. And it isn't just Bush. It isn't just Trump. It was the first Bush. It was Reagan, the second Bush with the illegal war. Even Clinton benefited from I put that in quotes, benefited from Ford's decision to pardon Nixon. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's important for the country to realize that just because you're president doesn't mean you can break the law. And I think we're at a different place in the country right now. I mean, we have 400,000 people who are dead because of the incompetency of this administration. We have a situation where we had an insurrection take place. We've never had that in this country, certainly not in the last 100+ years. I mean, since the Civil War. I mean, the last Friday Donald Trump was in office, he held a meeting with the My Pillow guy, and in his notes was talking about martial law. Now, the president's aides can slough that off, but of all the people, you're the president of the United States. This is your last weekend in office. There's 400,000 people dead of a pandemic.
This is the guy you make time for. It's incredible.
This is the guy you're meeting with? How about having a meeting with your coronavirus task force to try to get the vaccine out fast? I mean, it's just not as simple as, well, we all have to heal. And frankly, the people in Congress who are saying we have to heal are the people who refuse to acknowledge that Joe Biden won a fair election. So they don't have a voice in this. It's kind of out of their hands. You know, if you drive the car in a bank robbery attempt and you're the driver and the guy inside robbing the bank shoots and kills the teller, you're getting a murder charge just like he is. So this idea that members of Congress now want to move on, it's not that simple anymore. And so, you know, there's going to be a massive investigation. I've written about this. I said I think it's going to, when all is said and done, it's going to be the greatest scandal in the history of the country, because we are going to have members of Congress that get arrested. We're going to have members of Congress go to jail. We're going to have members of Congress who are found to be behind this. We're going to have members of the Trump administration behind this. I mean, this is going to be a massive scandal. Now, does that mean that it completely obscures what Joe Biden's term? No. I mean, we're a country that can multitask. I mean, we play with our phones and have how many windows open up to various apps. You're telling me we can't, prosecute wrongdoers and run the country at the same time? Of course we can. But it's just going to be a very, very messy period. And, there can't be any unity until there's accountability. And when there's accountability, then you're going to get unity. And I think that's how it's going to play out over the next year or two.
Yeah. Let's not forget accountability for the police people all over the country who there was a detective in Philadelphia, a whole bunch of folks, in addition to the Capitol Guards, who were complicit, who either invited these people in, showed them maps, showed them where to go. In the country, there's still that rotten police thing that goes back to Serpico in my mind, that we have a big problem with the police. Since the initial shooting that made all the headlines of the black kid, there have been 86 separate police shootings of unarmed black people in this country.
It's a massive problem. It's a massive problem. And the white supremacist movement infiltrating law enforcement has been a problem that even FBI Director Wray in several congressional hearings has said it's one of the biggest challenges they have right now. And that's, the difference is the previous administration did nothing about it. The hope is this administration is going to address that problem, because it is a massive problem with law enforcement. I mean, one of the mistakes the Democrats made was the term defund the police, because, there's an old saying, if you have to explain a saying, then it's already a bad saying. So when you hear defund the police, people think, oh, you're taking the money away from the police. That
should have been reappropriate the funds. Would have been much better.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to retrain. And what ended up happening is, for people who aren't following politics every single day, which is most of the country, they hear defund the police and they're completely turned off. And it's the reason why Democrats lost seats and lost a couple of Senate elections they should have won. The message has to be better. I mean, look, we have a major problem with police forces. First of all, the weaponry is out of hand. Some of these police forces have military-like equipment. They don't need military equipment. Okay, what they need is more training in dealing with people who don't look like themselves. They're going to need to dial down the performance-enhancing drugs that are just littered in law enforcement agencies around the country. All of these guys look like, all these guys look like baseball players in the early 80s.
Look like Bluto. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, none of that stuff really goes toward doing the job properly. And so all of that has to change.
Most of them do nothing physical that would require it. They pull over a traffic stop here and there. Very few people actually benefit. Very few police people benefit from the performance-enhancing drugs. And what it does, more than anything, it messes with your mind. I just from my experience in baseball, I know how personalities are changed when you use the drugs. I've seen
no question
firsthand what it's done to players. I'm not going to mention any names, who are just good people, and all of a sudden they're mental cases. And we're talking about people with guns now. It's okay if you have a baseball, but supplementing your diet as a police person with PEDs just doesn't make sense. Excellent point. Excellent point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work we have to get done in the country, and it's not going to be done overnight. It's kind of, I analogize it to a diet. Somebody says they want to lose 20 pounds. You didn't gain 20 pounds in a week. You're not going to lose it in a week. And so it really have to have, significant conversations and really get to the root of these problems. And we're going to have to start having that conversation. It starts at the top in some ways to being able to set the tone, but really it starts in local law enforcement and in our local communities. We spend so much time discussing national elections. Real change comes at the local level, at the grassroots level, and that's what really has to take place if we're going to ever start, working together again and not being really two separate countries, red and blue. And so, it's certainly with a change in administration and a change in tone and a change in competence, that's a huge step in the right direction. But we have our work cut out for us, and it's going to take a long time for us to...
We have some problems. Both of us live in states that are not handling the pandemic very well at all.
Correct.
California, for instance, and you can tell me about Florida, California just imposed a lockdown, total lockdown in many communities. But do the communities listen? Do they? It's supposed to be only essential businesses open. Well, Alameda County where I live, has an inordinate amount of businesses that simply ignore that. There's no teeth in it, and without a lockdown and mask wearing and this, that, and the other thing, this whole pandemic is going to be like the 1980 Spanish flu, 18 Spanish flu. There's going to be millions more people die because they can't get a handle on it, and it's the responsibility of the people to wear masks and at least bite the bullet for a while and lock down, and they're not doing that. What is it like in Florida?
Well, South Florida is a disaster in the sense that it's much like, other places in the country. People are ignoring wearing masks, and we have a governor who doesn't make it a mandate to wear one. The infection rate is rising. It's the dumbest thing we've done as a country in our lifetime is politicizing wearing a mask. It is the fundamental reason why Donald Trump wasn't reelected. You think about this, in the first day of the coronavirus task force in March, if Donald Trump walked out there wearing a mask and said, I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's something you may not want to do, but we need to do this, we wouldn't be where we are today, and he would have gotten reelected in a landslide, and we would have our lives back. But instead, it was just denial and incompetence and more denial and more incompetence. And now we have 400,000 people dead, millions infected. We're going into the middle of winter, which is always a difficult flu season. We have different strains of the virus now. The Trump administration couldn't even distribute the vaccine properly because in his mind, I lost the election. I don't care. I mean, right. Again, going back to the disrespect for the country and the office, that's how he acted. So we really have not had a president since early November. We've been a completely rudderless ship. And now the Biden administration has to come in and find a way to ramp up vaccinations and get people to wear masks and work with state governments to whether it's a lockdown or whether to do things to prevent the spread of the virus. I mean, it's a monumental task, and it is number one priority because nothing else can get done in the country if we're still all sick and we still can't function and we can't travel and we can't do business and all that's necessary to to be a functioning country. So, it's going to be difficult. I mean, the good news is
it would help if the people prioritized something: health over wealth. And
yeah, it's very simple. I mean, you want to be around long enough to spend money. You can't spend money if you're dead. And really, we've gone through a period of 4 years of complete selfishness and narcissism. And that has a wearing effect. It's like being in an abusive relationship. And now we don't have that anymore. And I think people are going to realize after about a week to 10 days where the tone is completely changed on a day-to-day basis. And I think we have a chance to get through to them at this point. Because there was no chance to get through to people when Trump was president because he had his minions convince everybody that this was just the flu and it's no big deal and you're a snowflake and you don't need to wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. And we see the result of that. So I do think things are going to change. It's just going to take some time. And if people are looking for an immediate change, they're going to be very disappointed. But I think we'll look back on this in 6 months and we'll be very happy that we had a change of administration when we get our lives back.
Yeah. Speaking of our lives back, people neglect a certain statistic. They just talk about how many people get it, how many people die, and how many people recover. What they don't talk about is the long-term effects of being infected by the disease, even if they don't die from it, even if they're never put on ventilators. It's estimated that their life expectancy just by contracting the disease is reduced substantially.
Well, it's a very good point. I mean, I saw a story last week. It showed the lungs of a cured COVID-19 patient, and it looked like someone had smoked for 30 years. And, the long-term health effects of this are going to be devastating. And it dovetails into, a healthcare plan and not getting people off healthcare and all of these things. I mean, so much of this intertwines. And that's why you need competency at the top. Because if you don't have competency at the top, look, generals plan wars, foot soldiers fight them. You have to have generals. You have to have that kind of leadership. And we've been absent that for 4 years. And now we've got to get it back. We can't just expect the foot soldiers to do everything. And, Biden's got a big job ahead of him, but he's got competent people around him. And that's the significant departure of the previous administration. I mean, Ron Klain,
caring people around him as well.
Yes, he has people that see outside their own world, and that helps, and outside their own bubble. And it's just really important because we are going into a dangerous time with this virus, and he's been very upfront about that. And things are going to get a little worse before they get better. But if we can get the vaccines out and get a better distribution of them, and get more people injected in a shorter period of time,
and educated too. People are scared, especially the black community. They're not really anxious to put something in their body that could go either way. And they've been most affected by this. And if we can't get them to vaccinate, we're not going to reach herd immunity before millions of people are gone. So education has to be part of it. And like I say, we have an administration that cares. And I have to feel optimistic on day one of Trump be gone.
Absolutely.
Ironically, he's in your state now. He's
living 20 minutes north of me. So of all the gin joints he could have showed up in, he unfortunately showed up in mine.
Right. Well, if you ever get a chance to call him a loser, just please take me up on. That would be nice. Hey, let's break it up and get to a higher note. I've been following you since we met on Facebook, in essence, and you have the privilege of a new pup. Tell me what that's meant to you.
Well, yeah, the dog is something that, he's a pandemic puppy in the sense that if there was not a pandemic, I probably wouldn't have gotten him because, my lifestyle was such that it would be very difficult to take care of him the way I would want to take care of a dog. But it was September of last year. He was a rescue in New Orleans and decided to do it, and it's been a life-changing experience. He's full of life. He's, when you're stuck at home and you can't really do much, obviously you have a lot more time to spend with him and take care of him, and he had a pretty rough life before I adopted him. So getting him to trust me over these last 4 months, can be challenging at times, but he's coming around in the corner of that. As we are speaking right now, he is asleep in my lap after playing with his tennis ball since 8 o'clock this morning, which will drive my neighbors crazy, but he loves to run and play with a tennis ball. And he's been
you gotta get the dog the backhand though. That's
it. And he's been a godsend. He's been great for my mental health. I've lost 16 pounds since I got him, so he's been great for my physical health. And it's been encouraging to see him developing more of a trust level with me and realizing that things are going to be okay, because early on, he had a lot of separation anxiety and he had a lot of fear of whether it's loud noises or loud voices or any sudden hand movement. So it led me to believe that he was abused when he was even younger, because he's only 13 months, and I got him when he was 9 months old. So I think he had a rough go of it early, but he's got a pretty darn good life now, and he's a trip. He's a lot of fun. He's a Dachshund mix, and Dachshunds are really kind of funny dogs because they aren't always friendly to anyone outside their little circle. But this dog loves all dogs. He loves people. You take him to the dog park, he's like the leader of the pack running around. It doesn't matter if they're big dogs or small dogs. He's playing with everybody. He's got a great personality, and that's been really cool. And it's nice to see him building more and more trust, so his personality's coming out even more.
And dog parks are great for socializing as well. So you're going to be
when there are people. See, Florida's a weird place. I always say that people come here, they're either running away from something or running to something, and you get the folks that are running away from something and they're not the most social cats in the world. And then you get people who, are pretty much easygoing, and they're as easygoing as their dogs, and they're much more sociable. This guy comes in, he's the king of the dog park. He just wants to run, and so he makes friends very quickly, which is nice. But he's been a godsend to me. This whole lockdown thing and the whole pandemic and all of this was really taking more of a mental toll on me than I even realized. And but it's changed a lot now, and he's a large reason why.
Boy, that's a great story, Joe. Warms my heart to see your interaction with the puppy and how far he's come and how far you've come, really. Because you were just
there's no question. Because I had not had a dog for 20 years, and I had a dachshund and I had not had a puppy for 36 years. I was working the LA Olympics in 1984. I was working with U.S. Gymnastics, because my college gymnastics coach was the gymnastics coach of U.S. Gymnastics. So I was helping do the PR there. And toward the end of the Olympics, I was walking down Melrose, and there was a pet store. And there was a dog. There was a little brown dachshund, in the window. And, you know, they bring you into the room and to see if you can bond with the dog kind of thing. And he was just kind of sitting very mooshad. And I said, listen, if you don't start perking up, you're going to end up back in the cage. And all of a sudden he started licking and playing with me, so I bought the dog. Now I had to figure out what to do. So I have this dog, and I have to get back to the hotel. So I put the dog, he was a puppy, so I put him in a Wendy's bag, Wendy's hamburger bag, and snuck him back in the hotel. Then I had to figure out how to get
that small.
Yeah,
or when
he was that tiny. Yeah, he was that
Wow.
tiny. He was like 2 months old. And so then I had to get him home. And a friend of mine worked for TWA, and she got me on the airline, changed my airline reservation so I could get him in without having to put him in baggage. So I got him in, and I got him home. And this is 1984, and my mother and father had 2 other dachshunds. So all of a sudden we had 3 dachshunds. And then I had him for 16 years. And when he passed away in 2000, I said, you know, I was devastated. So I didn't get another dog. And you know how that is. If you don't get one early on, your life kind of goes in a different direction. And, you know, you come up with a zillion reasons why you shouldn't get a dog. And so in the last year or so, I've been thinking about getting a dog. But there was always something that was kind of in the way. And then all of that changed this fall, you know, in September. September 9th is when I adopted him. So,
well, I hope it continues to work out for you. You know,
yeah, thanks.
Pets bring an immense amount of joy to people, and
there's no question.
It's underrated. Let's put it that way. Reduces one's blood pressure, just helps you sleep better. It's great. So continue. Joe, one more thing I want to talk to you about. When you and Peter and I talked, Peter Golenbach, you mentioned, and I didn't even know it, I was just getting to know you a little bit at the time, you had a nephew that was playing pro ball, and you were following his career along the way. Tell me about that experience for him and what it's like being a blood relative to a baseball prospect.
Oh, my nephew, Tony Sanchez, was the first-round pick of the Pirates in 2009. He was the 4th pick in the draft. He was a catcher. He played with the Pirates and the Giants and Rangers, and he just retired this past year. He's finishing up his degree at Boston College, and you know, it was a great experience, and it was kind of a mixed blessing because in Tony's case, he had some injuries that held him back. He had some major league time, and then kind of the last year or so, things started shifting. 2 years. Shifting in terms of how catchers are evaluated, the analytics revolution took over, and organizations became more analytically driven rather than player driven. And it was kind of like he got caught in between all, you know, scouting and analytics, and then also the way the game was changing. It was kind of a mixed bag. You know, I think he's a kid that should be in the majors right now. It didn't work out that way. And then the pandemic hit, and so you had no minor league season last year. And so it really, you know, I don't think people realize the effects of no minor league season, what it's done to baseball and what it's done to player development and what it's done to players. I mean, it is literally like taking 1,000 people and putting them out of work. And with no backup, and, you know, no unemployment, no job skills training, no nothing. You know, Tony was fortunate. You know, he's only a few credits short of getting a degree. He, you know, financially is in good shape. So, you know, it's a little bit different for him. But for so many players, it's just devastating. And even at the major league level, you know, you see what's going on now, how slow played all of free agency is. And what's going on. I mean, look, baseball, I mean, yeah, it's run by billionaires and they don't like to dip in their own pocket. And so what they're doing is they're using the pandemic as a way to stifle down player salaries. Rob Manfred has taken a blowtorch to the minor leagues. So player development, yeah, it's terrible. And player development now is completely in a state of flux with so many teams. And so, if you're a player that is trying to get to the majors, or you're close to being there, or for lack of a better term, a 4A player, you're pretty much wiped out, because what happens is baseball says, you know what, I don't want to pay those 29 to 32-year-old guys. I'll just, have a farm system full of 21 and 22-year-olds, and if they make it, they make it. If not, then I'll just deal with the guys I have. And so you lose this large chunk of players, which lowers the quality of play. And so it's this, it's like you're eating your own. You're not developing players. You're not developing talent. And even the way, and you have a lot of coaches at the minor league level who are leaving the game. Coaches who help develop the Mike Trouts and the Josh Bells and the Francisco Lindors. These guys are all leaving the industry. So, who is developing these players? You go and sign some 16-year-old kid from Latin America and give him $4 million. Who's developing him the next 5 years, Ralph? It's like you're literally just basically throwing everyone in the deep end of the pool, and the ones that don't drown, you pick up. I mean, it's insane that's in today's world. That's how we're developing baseball players, but that's what's happening. A lot of good players are slipping through the cracks. A lot of players that could help teams win games because it's no longer viable to keep doing it. And
baseball,
it's a shame.
Baseball is a sport where you have to develop, not only you come with natural abilities, but you need to develop those skills that are so important, the skills that differentiate a good ball player from a great ball player. And
absolutely.
What we're seeing at the major league level as a result, and what we will continue to see, is players that just aren't as good because they weren't developed. So
absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Is reduced. Does your nephew want to get into coaching? Has that been an option for him?
I'm not sure. I think he's kind of keeping all of his options open. I think he would like to stay in the game in some capacity, but I think right now he's enjoying being a student. He's enjoying finishing up, and then after that, I think he'll see where his passions lie and where he would like to go. I'd like to see him stay in the game because he's got a lot to offer. But I've been on this journey with him since he was 12 years old. And so I've kind of, taken it to a point where he's a new father. He's got a 1.5-year-old son.
Wow.
It's your life changes, and you try to do the things that, provide for your family and make you happy and do things. The only thing I tell him is, do something you really like doing. The money will come if you do something you really like doing. And I think he started, as he's getting into school and he's getting straight A's and he's really getting into it. It's like, it is a lot like when you're an athlete, you need a confidence boost. If you're in a slump, you need to get that big hit. If you're a pitcher, you need to have that big outing if you've struggled. When you haven't been in school for 10 years, and you go back to school, it is a tremendously intimidating thing. So you need that positive feedback. And all of a sudden, you start getting good grades, and you start getting feedback that's positive. It gives you a confidence level that may have been beaten down in the last year or two of your playing career, but now it's boosted back up because of the things you're accomplishing off the field. And I think that's the place he's at in his life right now, and that's good. That's what I wanted, because baseball was always going to be, in the grand scheme of things, a small part of your life. If you live to be 80 years old, If you're lucky, you play 10, 15 years of Major League Baseball or professional baseball. You got the rest of your life to live. So I think he's got it in the proper perspective, and that's healthy. And, hopefully he finds a place in the game when he's ready, because I think he has a lot to offer.
Well, do you know percentage-wise, how few players make it even so far as to the minor leagues? He got a touch of big league action. As I say, he's in the baseball almanac. That for the rest of his life. He can draw on I was a professional baseball player. I was a major league baseball player. No matter what happens, that's got to be a good feeling for him.
It's hit his first major league home run against a Cy Young Award winner and Tim Lincecum. He, was a first round pick. He's in the baseball almanac. There's a lot to feel good about.
Yeah, I'm out in California, and I followed his career both on and off the field for Tim Lincecum all the way, and he was nicknamed the Freak, and he was an unusual person, and I say that with a great deal of respect in a lot of different ways. Timmy was a superhuman being, and he did it his way. Let's put it that way. So
exactly. No, it's and that's kind of a cool thing, because he had a huge amount of success, but he understood it's just a game. In the grand scheme of things, it's just a game, and it's a small window of your life, And I think one of the things I was remarking to somebody the other day. If you can be a diehard sports fan and you love your teams and you're rooting and you're into it and all that stuff, the one thing you learn in the times that we're in, it's pretty easy to overcome disappointing losses when you pick up the paper and another 5,000 people have died of COVID. And we have more troops in Washington, D.C. than we do in Afghanistan and Syria combined to try to keep the incoming president and vice president safe. I mean, you start saying, sports doesn't mean too much when we're going through all this crap. So it does give you a tremendous amount of balance.
Americans with guns. I was thinking Kent State all the way. There was going to be something that would set it off. We were lucky today. There were no instances, and no reported instances all over the country. They were talking about the possibility of other capitals being affected, and put guards here and put guards there. Hasn't been any of this. This has been a blessing.
Yep, it sure has. It's a step in the right direction. There's no question about it.
I'm glad you could be part of it with me.
Ralph, it's a pleasure. Always enjoy it.
All right, let's do it again real soon. Let's not let it get to another year and a half.
Works for me.
Let's keep up. Enjoy you so much, Joe. I respect you and everything you've done.
Thank you, sir. You're very kind. Thanks very much, and thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Joe Castle, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tycho, the weak link of it all. Happy trails, everybody. Talk to you soon. Adios.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.